Good morning, and welcome to another FasTrax webinar. Webinars are weekly events where we show you all of the ins and outs of our software, as well as how to use it. You can find our webinars at goftx.com, clicking on the FTx Lifeline button, scrolling down about halfway until you see webinar, and you have our webinars. You can sign up for future events, or you can go back and watch previous ones. Today, I'm going to be showing you the POS Cloud POS Global Settings. So starting off, you'll be presented with the dashboard. On the left, you want to click on Maintenance, Settings and Panels, and then here you'll have your settings hyperlinks. You'll click on POS, and then down here on the far right, you got your POS Device Global Settings. Now Derek has already covered in the first part of this the register settings and the receipt settings. I'm going to be covering the rest of them. So starting off, we have our credit card settings. These are settings that allow you to control different individual aspects of how the POS handles credit cards. So starting off, we have do not print header information on second credit card receipt. So this will allow you to toggle on or off and decide whether or not you want to print your receipt header information on a secondary credit card receipt. If this is set to no, it will not print the header information. Second, you have do not print item detail on second credit card receipt. Almost the same thing as this, except this will not print the item details on that secondary credit card receipt if you have it set to no. Or if you have it set to yes. Apologies. Do not print footer information on second credit card receipt. If this is set to yes, it will not print the footer information that you have set within the receipt settings. Do not print age verify on second credit card receipt. If this is set to yes, it will not print where the age was verified for a age-restricted sale. By default, it's set to no. Do not print barcode on second credit card receipt. If this is set to yes, then it will not print a barcode on the secondary receipt. Barcodes are used for if the customer is doing a return, or if you were wanting to look at the details of a receipt, you can scan the barcode and it'll pull it up. By default, that's set to no. Do not print logo on second credit card receipt. If this is set to yes, this will not print your logo that you have saved within your receipt settings. It will not print it on that secondary credit card receipt. By default, it's set to no. Do not print signature line on first credit card receipt. If this is set to yes, it will not print the customer signature on the credit card receipt. Do not automatically prompt for card swipe. If this is set to yes or true, when the customer goes to pay on the PIN pad will not prompt for them to swipe their card. By default, it's set to no. Do not show manual entry button on credit card authorizations. So if this is set to true, whenever a customer is paying with a credit card, on the cashier's side, they will have an option for a little button on the bottom right that says manual. That will allow them to manually enter the credit card information to run it. If this is set to yes, it will not show that button. By default, it's set to no. Minimum sale, require minimum sale amount. What this is it allows you to input a value here, and if the transaction is below this amount that you type in. So for example, if we type in 15, that would be $15. If a transaction total is less than the $15 and required minimum sale amount is set to yes, then the customer will not be able to pay for that transaction with a card, or specifically with a credit card. By default, this is set to 0, and this is set to no. Require manager override for manual entry amount greater than. What this is, you get to type in whatever value you would like, and if the transaction total is greater than the value that you type in here, and this is set to yes, a manager will have to come in and override that transaction to allow for that customer to pay for that amount. By default, it's set to no. No signature needed on sales. If this is set to yes, this does not require the customer to sign the PIN pad or any of the receipts on credit card sales. By default, it's set to no. No signature sales amount. So if this is set to yes, and you have, say, $20, if a transaction is $20 or greater, and this is set to yes, then the customer will not have to sign. Anything lower than that, they would have to sign. By default, it's set to no. Full disable manual entry button. This will 100% clear out that manual entry button for manually entering a credit card button. As I was explaining earlier, whenever a customer is paying at the credit card machine, on the cashier side, they will have a small button in the bottom right of the screen that prompts them for manual entry. If this is set to yes, that button will be completely disabled. We'll go ahead and turn it off for now. Disallow partial authorizations. What this does is if you have for example, $20 sale, and a customer runs a credit card, but they're only approved for $10 on that card, typically the POS will accept that $10 and then say that the customer owes another $10. If you have this set to yes, disallow partial authorizations, that $10 amount that the customer's card would have been approved for, it will not approve it for that. So basically, if a customer runs a card and they do not have the full sale amount on that card, then it will be declined. So we'll actually turn that off. On the right here, we have our credit card fees. Apply credit card fee. If we set this to yes, this will allow us to type in a fee amount. Now we can also have that fee amount to be a flat rate, or we can have it to be a percentage. If we set it to percentage and say we type in 5, what this will do is add a 5% fee to that transaction. Or if we set it to flat and we type in 5, it will be $5. Unless we specify with a period, we could do even 5 cents. Now, if you have a department where you want to log all of your fees that you brought in, you would type in that department name here. Pre-authorized amount. This is you can type in whatever value you would like, and it will pre-authorize the sale for that amount. You have a tip type. Now, if you have a tip button on your POS, you can use that button, and this is where you would configure the tip amount. You could have it a flat rate or a percentage, just like up here with the fee. You have the tip amount, This is a value that you can type in. And then you have the department that you would also type in the name of to track those transactions that are coming in. Of course, we do have, for both of these settings, we have enable pre-authorization and add tip when auto closing. Those are configured here. Down here, we have allow phone number lookup. This will allow, if the customer is within the system, you can look up their information with their phone number. We have disable confirm amount. If this is set to yes, the customer will not be prompted to confirm the amount that they are being charged for at the PIN pad. By default, we have that set to no. Allow debit cashback. By default, it's set to no, but if we set this to yes, this will allow a customer to request cash back on debit card transactions. We'll set that to no. We have open cash drawer. When we set this to yes, anytime a credit card is ran and totaled out, it will open the cash drawer. By default, we turn that to no. Register is unintegrated. This is for if you do not have a deployment from DataCap. If you are not running a PIN pad or a deployment for credit card processing through our system, you can set this to yes, and it will not ask for that information. You would continue your transactions on whatever standalone hardware you have or program. We're going to set that to no. We'll disable manual entry button, manage override. So if you have if you have this setting checked for manager override on manual entries, and you have this set to yes, this will disable this function as well. We're going to set both of these to no. So these are the credit card settings. We're going to move on to loyalty settings. So here, this is where you can configure the way the POS handles loyalty transactions. Well, specifically when it comes to loyalty customer information. Scan ID start with. This is a box. This is for if you have loyalty cards. If you have purchased cards to give out to your customers who sign up for the loyalty program, whatever UPC or ID number that they start with, you can type in that value here, and whenever you are running a loyalty transaction and a customer swipes their card or you scan it, if that card's value does not match what you have set in here, it will not pull that information. It's pretty nifty, especially if you use loyalty cards. Auto open customer profile window. If this is set to yes, what it will do is when you scan a customer's ID or bring up their information with their loyalty card, if this is set to yes, it will open up their profile on the POS. It will show you their general information, how much points they have, and what coupons they have available. By default, we have that set to no. Prompt for email. This is for when you are ringing up a loyalty customer. It will, if you have this set to yes, it will prompt for their email information. This is good for if they want to receive email notifications about any sort of discounts you have going or any sort of loyalty campaigns you have going. By default, it's set to no. Prompt for referral code. If you have a customer who you scan into the loyalty system, this will prompt you for a referral code if they happen to have one. You would put in that referral code, and then depending on the campaign, they could get rewarded points for that. We're going to turn that to no. Scan ID length. This allows you to put a numeric value for how many digits are within your loyalty IDs here. By default, it's set to 0. Allow check-in without membership. This would be with the mobile app. If you have a loyalty program running and a customer with the loyalty app comes in, they would be able to check into your store without being a member of your loyalty program. By default, we have that set to no. Prompt for phone. If a customer's phone number is not within this system and you bring up their loyalty information, the system will prompt you to enter the customer's phone number. By default, it's set to no. Auto check-in when scanning. So if you scan a loyalty customer's ID, it will auto check in that customer at that location. By default, we have it set to no. So these are the loyalty settings. We're going to move on to the recon settings. These are actually for these are very useful here. So when you're doing your lottery recon, depending on how your games are numbered, if you have a book of 50 and it counts down from 50, you would have your lottery sort direction in descending order. If you have them counting up to 50 from 0, you would have it set as ascending. Now, whenever you have get lottery outs from, so if you have when you're paying out lottery, you can have that coming from either a department or if you have a payout account set up. Typically, this is set to department. Sort lottery games by. So whenever you are entering a lottery game, you can have everything sorted by either the game number or the bin number that those games are assigned to. By default, we have it set to game number. Print blind. If this is set to yes, and an employee prints out a lottery recon, it will not show them the total dollar values of that lottery recon. By default, we have that set to no. And then lastly, we have hard code starting till. If we set this to yes, a little box right here appears where we can type in a numeric value for the starting till. So if you have every day your cashiers come in and they start with, say, $200 in their cash register. If one of them somehow does not type that value into the POS on the startup, then with this setting checked and you go to do your recons, 200 will automatically populate into the starting till. By default, we do have that set to no. We're going to go into other settings. Here on the left, we have print chit on clock in/out. If this is set to yes, whenever you have a cashier clock in or out, it will print a small slip of paper to confirm that they had clocked in or out. By default, this is set to no. Register Z is blind. If this is set to yes, whenever a cashier Z's out, the total value of that Z won't be showing on that Z for the cashier, and will require the cashier to actually count the drawer and verify all of the amounts. By default, we have that set to no. Register Z show department group. If you have this set to yes and you have departments assigned to department groups, this will show you what department group each department is a part of on the Register Z. By default, we do have that set to no. Register Z force close suspended sales. If this is set to yes, and as a cashier you have, say, 5 sales that you had started to ring up, and then the customer said that they would be back. So you suspend the sale. When you do a register Z, instead of hanging on to those suspended sales and waiting for the customers to come back, this will just close them. So when the customer comes back, you would have to re-ring everything up. By default, we have that set to no. Default time clock type. So whenever you go to clock in or out, you have many options for the type of punch that you're doing. You have your standard, you have your sick, vacation, holiday, or other. This drop-down allows you to select what the default is. So we're going to leave it at standard here. We're going to continue across the top here. We have detailed logging. When this is set to yes, this is typically used for support purposes. But when this is set to yes, it takes a detailed log of the system throughout the day, so that if there were any issues from a support standpoint, we would be able to see precisely where they came from. By default, it's actually set to no. For our staging, we're going to keep it to yes. Disable time clock. If we have this set to yes, the time clock will not be showing on the POS. I'm going to turn that to no. Force time clock before using POS. If you have this set to yes, it will force the cashier who logs in to clock in or out before, it will force them to clock in before they use the POS. We're going to set that to no. Force authorization on all time clock entries. I believe this is actually set to no by default, but when it's set to yes, it will require an authorization for each punch in. Prompt on exit. What this would be is if you are closing out of the POS and you're to that splash screen for open POS and settings, when you close out of the POS, it will prompt you, when prompt on exit is set to yes, it will prompt you whether or not you want to use the time clock to clock in or out. By default, we're going to have that set to no. On the top right here, we have force a starting till. If we set that to yes, it will force the cashiers will not be able to use the POS until a starting till amount is typed in. Those are actually handled over here in the receipt settings. We're going to set that to no. Register Z show departments. I believe by default that this is set to no, but when it's set to yes, when a cashier Z's out, it will show each department that had earned money in that register Z. We're going to leave that to yes. Unique cashier per Z. When this is set to yes, what this does is forces only one cashier to only be able to use one register at a time, or essentially, whenever a cashier logs into the POS and they start their transactions, another cashier will not be able to log in and continue to add totals to that register Z until the previous cashier Z's out. We're going to click that to no. Use recon buckets in register Z. What this does is adds specific totals to their respective recon buckets on the register Z tape. By default, I do believe this is set to no, but we're going to keep it to yes. Enable time clock break. When this is set to yes, it allows the cashier to it will give an option to take a break on the time clock. We're going to set that to no. Moving down here, we have verify checks. It gives you the options to verify it with a negative or a positive. We're going to set that to none. House account vendors. So if you have a vendor that you work with, but you work with them through house accounts, you would be able to select them here. Print house account invoices. You have, by default, it's set to none, but you can have it set to automatic or manual. Automatic is whenever a transaction is totaled out, it'll automatically print that invoice. Or if you set it to manual, it'll give you the option to go back and print that for that house account. Number of house account receipts. This allows you to type in a numeric value for how many receipts you want to print out on a house account transaction. By default, it's set to 0. Your tare weight allows you to type in the value here. Number of days to keep live receipts. This allows you to type in a numeric value for the amount of days that you want to keep receipts live and active on the POS, for the cashier to scroll back through and print out. By default, it's set to 0, meaning at the end of the day, all those receipts that are showing in the POS are going to clear out. Or if you set it to 3, it'll keep 3 days worth of receipts on the POS. Then you have your number of days to keep archive. What this does is whenever it clears out those POS receipts, there's actually a folder where they are kept on the machine. And over time, as your receipts continue to grow, the system will automatically archive them. So now you can set a value here for how many days you want to keep that archive active. So if we set it to 30, it will keep 30 days worth of receipts in that archive. Anything past 30 days will automatically be deleted out. Of course, you will still be able to access your receipts through Control Center, going into your going back and going into your reports. But in terms of the physical, or the specifically the raw receipt file on the machine, this will keep it active for 30 days. Moving over to the right, we have allow manual gift card entry. If this is set to yes, it will allow you to manually enter the information for a gift card. We're going to set it to no. Print gift card on report printer. When you have this, if you have this set to yes and you are loading a gift card, and if you don't have a physical card, this will actually allow you to print a barcode and number for that gift card on a printer, on a piece of paper for the customer. By default, it's set to no. We're going to leave it on no. Then we have customer lookup settings, or the default search types here. So when you're doing a loyalty transaction and you go to look up a loyalty customer, you can look them up by the phone number, the last name, the email, the license number, or their ID. This allows you to select what is the default when you open up that search screen. So we're going to leave it on the last name here. Going over to the far right, we got Control Center settings. So now if you have uplifts and you check the uplifts to yes, it will display your uplifts on the POS. And if you have if you have images attached to your uplifts for specific items, and this is set to yes, it will show those images on the uplift prompt. So I do believe that that we've kind of covered the rest of the settings for Control Center POS Global Settings. We went through credit card settings, we went through our loyalty settings, our recon settings, other settings, and lastly our Control Center settings. Thank you for joining me today in our webinar. Of course, if you have any questions, you can always go back and refer to our webinars. We also have documentation under FTx Lifeline. It is similar to finding the webinars, except instead of clicking on webinars, we have our documentation here. We are continuously updating this, so if you ever have any questions, you can refer to our website or give us a call. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. Hope you have a wonderful Friday and a great weekend. Thank you. Bye-bye.